Hello.
Hello.
So I'm joined today by Mr. Luke Ryan,
Hi, that's me. How's
uh,
it, Ryan?
and we're going to do a bit of a chat about Awdry stuff. I think that's the best way.
Yeah, it's pretty all encapsulating, isn't it?
So I said I was going to do something today, and I mentioned I put onto Twitter with some questions. So I think we're going to discuss those. Before we do that, I'll tell you what. Before I show Duncan, have you got anything to show us, Luke?
Well, I've got an array of models, and just to start us off, if you're showing Duncan, I'm going to show my Duncan.
Hey. Oh, very nice.
So that's that there. I've got the number 6 in the front there as well.
Yeah, I'm debating with that one. I noticed was your chassis that yours was on. Have you painted those bits grey, or were they grey on yours?
What the
Is it the expansion link?
valve gear type stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's molded. That's the plastic it came in. The only thing I've painted on here is the frames and the wheel centers.
Because mine's red on my chassis. That's all.
Oh right, okay.
That's what I was just wondering.
The Loco probably had red rods, whereas mine had grey rods.
Now I don't know if this is going to work. Oh, there we are. I've just switched the camera around. I don't know if that will show when we broadcast this back. So here's mine. Although, give me a second. I need to flip this image.
It's flipped on my end, so I don't know if it'll be flipped on yours or not.
Yeah, hold on a second. Let me see if I can. Hey, there we go. Has that altered things at your end, Luke, or not? No, it has.
It was always the right way for me, so don't worry.
So there we are. That was the side that was a pink.
Looks excellent.
And then.
And what I do like is, as you were saying, we do have. Well, we're both modelling the Skyloey, but we've both got our own little differences here and there.
Yeah. I've used a slightly thinner lining.
Lining for one, and also I've gone for black steam pipes from the smoke box to the cylinders, where you've gone for the red steam pipes. I will say that's part and parcel because I'm very used to Douglas.
Yeah, I noticed Douglas has the.
Yeah, Douglas has always had black steam pipes, so that's it's just the kind of like the reality. The real Locos having a bit more of an influence on mine because I'm used to them more, I guess.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
So we have. I'll tell you what. Have you got Sir Handel there?
I do.
Oh, let's have a look at. As he's my next project.
What's Sir Handel there?
Which is the same kit as the one that I'm going to be doing, isn't it?
It is, yeah, the Rodney Stenning kit. Sadly, quite hard to come across these days. I very luckily saw someone on Twitter, actually, here, selling one, and I had to have it. I paid a decent price for this.
Well, it's a similar situation. Well, we were on a video chat, weren't we? And you were saying, well, if you're going to do Sir Handel, you need the earlier model. And I was like, oh, Luke, which one that? That's the Rodney Stenning one. It's very rare. Type.
We've both already got the Chivers Fine Lines white metal kit, but that's Sir Handel post, well, not even Sir Handel, Sir Hayden post 1968, I want to say, for the new cab. Because I don't know if you can see it in the illustrations at the minute. Sir Handel, as you can see, the cab reaches all the way to the water tank. Yeah. If you look at the illustrations, it's the same. If you look at New Little Engine, the Christopher Awdry book, he has a cab where you've got bunkers in the front. And people who are more used to the TV series, that's also the normal cab to them. Because the TV series went for the 1968 cab, rather than the more traditional cab.
And our friend Anthony Cools posted, didn't he, a picture of his model, a very nice model, and that's the later version, is it? Because
that is the Chivers kit he's built there.
And for those who just want to see what the box looks like, here it is.
It's a very nice box.
It's a very nice box, and I couldn't get over that. It is the instructions, which are there on top. They look absolutely new. It looks like it could have been printed yesterday.
Yeah, I don't think that's actually ever been attempted to be built. Looking at it.
I know. So anyway, that is the next project. So this morning I asked on Twitter if anybody had any questions. So I am just going to get these up for us to have a look at. So where is it? So I think we'll start with the first one that came in, which was from Hobbit Nerd Entertainment, who says, could you possibly discuss Awdry's writings and research on Gordon and Henry, more specifically about Henry's rebuild and Gordon and Flying Scotsman being brothers and being the last Doncaster A3s?
Well, for one, you'll find Gordon's not an A3.
I was just thinking that, yes.
Yeah. I think there is a little bit of confusion regarding A1s and A3s and what exactly the difference is. And obviously, because later on you got Thompson A1s as well.
Yeah.
So there's another A1. So basically, when built, an A1 is what you know as like Flying Scotsman. And then a little later on, I can't remember, was it 1928? I want to say.
I can't tell you off the top of my head. It's either late 30s. Throughout the 20s, there were experiments going on the 8th.
Yeah, I want to say 1928, but I could be a bit early. So the first A1 was Great Northern, number 1470, and that was built in 1922. Flying Scotsman was number 1472 and wasn't named Flying Scotsman, and he was built in February.
Yeah, Scotsman was the first two A1s that were built under the Great Northern, which were Great Northern itself and Sir Frederick Banbury.
Yeah,
and then Scotsman was the first LNER built A1, technically.
Yeah. So a year later is when Flying Scotsman actually gained the name Flying Scotsman, because there was the Great Exhibition happening, and the LNER had just renumbered all of their engines. So instead of being number 1472, he became 4472, which is the more known number, and was given the name Flying Scotsman, named after the Flying Scotsman Express train from, was it Euston to Edinburgh?
King's Cross.
Sorry, King's Cross to Edinburgh.
I'm not Gordon getting mixed up.
I'm so used to, because I've only ever been to London a couple of times, and it's always been to Euston. So I am actually doing what's happened in the story.
I've only been to London once by train, and I went into King's Cross.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, no, sorry, King's Cross to Euston. That was the name Flying Scotsman predates the engine, but the engine was named after the train service. So basically, I've looked into it, and I found Gordon wouldn't actually know Flying Scotsman as Flying Scotsman from the start. It would just be he is Gordon and number 1472. I've looked. This is my personal thing. Like I say, Flying Scotsman was built and finished and was in service in February 1923. So I give Gordon a couple of months before he goes to Sodor, because he did go to Sodor in 1923, early 1923, which is what the Rev wrote in the Island of Sodor book, which Tom has got to hand.
Hold on.
There we are, you lucky bugger. So Awdry wrote that Gordon went in early 1923. So I pin him down leaving probably kind of like April or May.
There's a small enough window there.
Give them a few months to get to know each other. And I imagine kind of like they seemed to really get on with each other in Enterprising Engines and know each other quite well. So I imagine there might have been like a little bit of communication via like letters and stuff, getting the drivers to write it and send it and stuff. So I imagine like when he gets a name, he'd keep it updated, but go cold after a while because you naturally lose touch.
And I think going into the late 60s period, there is that fact that from 1966, Scotsman was the last A3.
Yes.
So then there becomes more of an emphasis on the fact you've got Gordon which I don't know what on earth Gordon actually would be classified as by 1966, really. But you've only got two Gresley, one being a former A1 and one being A3, actually left in existence.
Yeah. With Gordon as well, like we say, he was built as a prototype. He predates Great Northern. So Gordon was either built, I think it's either like 1921 or early 22, I think. It's kind of like, it could be one or the other. And yeah, built as a prototype, so slightly different to a regular A1, but close enough. It was sold to the Northwestern, as I said, in like probably May or June 1923 with a spur boiler. 1939, there was an accident of some description which messed up all the valve gear, went to crew and was rebuilt to have a more flowing running board, and also was converted to 2 cylinders with larger cylinders of Stanier design of the LMS. And as a example of that, we've got my Gordon. That's there. As you can see, you won't see cylinders like this on any other A1 or A3, nor that type of valve gear. That's Wildshot's rather than Gresley's conjugated.
Lovely.
But yeah. And I do suppose with all the prototyping stuff, Henry does kind of lead in.
Well, yeah, because I know you get... I like the fact that Henry is in 2 parts in the iOS book. Because yes, they are really, in essence, they are 2 separate locomotives, really.
They are. It is the same Henry.
Yeah.
But it's the same way as like a Patriot and a rebuilt Patriot are the same loco. There's not much left of the original loco.
No.
But they are, by all accounts, the same locomotive.
Absolutely. Like, again, with like the Royal Scots, rebuilt, unrebuilt.
I don't know if I'm going to get that much, but I'm not a big fan of when people do stories like, oh, the Black 5 Henry isn't actually Henry. It's a whole new engine and he doesn't know. Which is fine if you want to do that. It's just not my cup of tea, because to me, it's Henry's Henry just had a very extensive rebuild, like all locos.
And maybe this is just me. I don't get too bogged down on the anthropomorphic side of. I like the fact that they are, and they but they're locomotives for me, and
does not need an explanation.
And this actually links into something I mentioned last night, and we've talked about this. And there's a few times I've been asked, are you going to put faces on your engines? And I might not, but for me, it's not a big deal breaker. And the thing I referenced last night was when I saw your diorama at Towin last July, which looked superb. And I remember what stood out for me, and I remember I kept saying it to you. I was like, you've got Gordon, Henry, and James, and I know you've got other ones in there. I think you've got Toby as well, and you've got Bertie as well, and you had them all with just a smoke box door. It didn't feel any less like the characters. They felt just the same, and that's when I was like, don't need a face for me. They are still the characters that we know and love. But yeah, so with the Henry thing, I like what you just said there. It's the same as being an unrebuilt and a rebuilt one, and maybe the only thing that they've retained is maybe the wheels, but they've kept the name, and that is good enough.
Yeah, and within the world of like the Railway series and stuff, that's enough for it to be the same engine. It's still Henry, no different to the Henry in the original stories.
Absolutely.
But so the whole thing with Henry's rebuild is obviously like in the Island of Sodor book, Awdry states, I think it was like 1919, some locomotive plans and drawings and designs were stolen from Doncaster Works.
That's right. I've got the page open on it. They remembered hearing rumours of a scandal at Doncaster in 1919 or thereabouts about the theft of some drawings. Nothing was proved, but it was alleged that a locomotive builder with a grudge against Gresley had engineered a leak so as to steal a march on him.
So what was stolen from Doncaster were the plans that eventually were made into Henry. And they were junked plans because they were well, we all know the stories. Tiny firebox, can't make steam. So that even it was in the autobiography Thomas the Tank Engine Man. It said what the Fat Controller actually bought was a cross between Gordon and a Nightmare.
Yeah, I like that phrase.
Yeah, because Henry is technically was one of the first designs in the development of the A1.
Yeah.
That's where the confusion in the stories were, like people like in behind the scenes saying like, oh, Gordon and Henry look alike originally, because it was a natural kind of evolution type thing.
And didn't Thomas Tank Engine Man also infers that Hat wanted an Atlantic?
Yes, he was looking to buy an Atlantic, and that's in iOS as well. My favourite quote is actually in the.
Yeah. You can read it. Have you got it to hand?
I'm just getting it up now. So yeah, it was like, Henry was one of Sir Topham's rare bad bargains. We only made his acquaintance in 1943, but even after 20 years, he was so angry at having been done that he would never who it was who had swindled him. I wanted an Atlantic, he would fume, and that blank, blank, blank sent me that, and he thumped a photograph on the table. So there you go, everyone. Sir Topham canonically curses out.
He swears. Swears like a trooper. And now this the bit about Henry II is interesting, and I don't know about you, Luke. I know we've got things like we've got iOS, and then there's Sodor reading between the lines. I always would put iOS ahead on factual stuff
because for anyone who might have reading between the lines, it's a perfectly good book. But Christopher Awdry did make quite a few mistakes, and it sounds so weird saying that because he is, Awdry's son. But he admitted that he got the date for the Flying Kipper crash wrong, and also got Sir Fergus Duncan, the small controller's name, wrong in the book.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure he calls it Sir Frederick Duncan, even though in all the in the iOS and the other books it's always Mr. Fergus Duncan.
Yeah.
So there are a few discrepancies in there. My thing is like, if what's in reading between the lines isn't, stated to be otherwise in any of the Reverend's books, then it's fine. But I'd take what the Reverend wrote as, the uppermost kind of thing.
Because what I was going to say on the back of this is, and this is a discrepancy between iOS and Sodor reading between the lines. iOS makes it very clear that it was a mystery to many that Topham Hatt was able to send the deplorable Henry I to crew in 1935 and receive back a Stanier Class 5 MT in tip-top condition as Henry II. So for me, I get the idea there, Henry is a Black 5.
Oh, 100%. Just a normal Black 5.
Now, we've discussed this before, that there is a bit of a discrepancy here. Is if you look at the illustrations of Henry, particularly by Dolby, you have an Ivat Black 5 rather than a Stanier Black 5. You've got a top feed further forward, which was how Black 5s were being produced in the late 40s.
Yeah.
Which then would have been fine if the book was set when the publication date was, but it's not. Because
that story, when Henry comes back, I'm pretty sure it's the because he crashes in the winter of early winter of 1935.
Yeah.
So it's like January 1935-ish when he crashes. So comes back kind of like end of the summer, I think it's implied, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it would be one of like the first batches of Black 5s which has the a different dome and top feed arrangement.
Known as
Henry's always illustrated with the later arrangement.
Known as the domeless Black 5s.
Yeah. I can see Henry maybe by the a bit later on by the 60s maybe needing like a new boiler, and they get one of the Ivat boilers. But as built, he should have the other dome arrangement.
I would say so, actually, and I would say that maybe if you're going to model Sodor 35, 36, even into the late 30s, I think you could get away with using a domeless Black 5, which has the shorter firebox, which Henry always looks like he's got a shorter.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
So yeah. Now here's another.
It's not wrong to have it with the other one like straight off the bat either, because it is shown in the books. Like, might be wrong historically, but we don't know what was happening at Crewe. Like,
and Hat may have had influence in the design of Henry II.
Who knows? It's one of those things. It's like, if you want to go fully historically accurate, you can. If you don't, it's fine.
Yeah. It's a bit like what I talked about last night about putting crests on locos. You don't put crests on locos. You're right.
No, I'm not a fan of it, but I think it looks nice on yours. It's one of those things. It's like, you can have your own little personal things as long as it kind of still works in the bigger picture.
There is, what's the word I'm looking for? There is nothing is absolutely. There's no definitive.
No.
And also with Henry, this is something we discussed about, is the tender that Henry II has behind him. It's pretty clear that Dolby illustrates it as a Stanier.
Yeah.
Tender. And it somehow evolves into a Fowler tender. Now, our mutual friend Ben, as we've talked about this, and I must admit I am a bit with Ben now, is that the Fowler tender thing I do struggle with, because they aren't, from a Crewe point of view, they aren't the most comfortable of tenders. They're particularly narrow, so if you're running tender first, they're fairly low backed, you'll get soaked. They're not ideally. If you have a Crewe of a Black 5, and you gave them the option of, you can have a Fowler tender or a Stanier 4,000 gallon tender.
Go for the Stanier.
They'll go with the Stanier every time. What I quite liked, and I think I've sent you pictures of this before, Luke, is that if you look at the front cover image of 8 Famous Engines, and there's the side shots of them, you look at Henry's tender, it does have a look of a Fowler high-sided.
Oh, you have mentioned that before, yeah.
And I must admit, if and when I do Henry, I would look to going down that route. Again, it's just been a bit different.
Yeah, I personally would just go for the Stanier tender, because
I think that would be my other option, is go with the Stanier. I don't actually think I'd go with the Fowler, because
it's weird, because for James I'd go with the Fowler, because I think that fits well with the kind of loco it is, because it's bigger than the Lancashire and Yorkshire tender you'd have, and it still works generally with the type of loco. Gordon, the model I've got does have a Fowler tender, and I do think it can work quite well, but I imagine they'd probably make one a bit wider to fit kind of like the dimension of the A1,
and you've also got the issues regarding LMS technology mixing with LNER. You're going to have issues with.
It's one of those things. I imagine it's probably like a Crovan's Gate built tender rather than a straight up Fowler tender.
If in doubt, leave it to Crovan's Gate.
Pretty much, they can do anything. But yeah, Henry, I don't think I'd ever give a Fowler tender personally. It just wouldn't look right. They're high-sided. I would though, but for me, Stanier first.
Oh, that's quite a good attitude for life. That Stanier first. So I think that sums up with the questions there from Hobbit Nerd.
Gordon relations, and a bit extra info as well.
Yeah, you see, you get a good deal with us. We always give you a bit extra. So I'm just going to move on to. I've lost where I was. I had all these open, and now I've closed it. Here we go. Alfred Chow. Hello, Alfred. I've always imagined some sort of secret romance between Toby and Mavis. How about to talk about the relationships, friendships, fallings outs between the different characters, and have gone unsaid in the books and texts? I'll let you start this one, Luke.
Well, I think we all know Toby and Henrietta are an old married couple, and Mavis is the annoying neighbour next door. That's it. The end. No.
I must admit, I've never seen a secret sort of relationship there. I've always just thought that Toby can't stand her.
Much, yeah.
Actually, if you need better evidence, there's no better evidence for that. And I think I've got the book here. If I look, I have. Hold on.
Oh, I know which illustration you're going to pick up.
It's the front cover one. If you look
Yeah.
here's Mavis. She looks all nice. If you look behind, hold on. I'm trying to see if I can see it. There you go. There's Toby looking absolutely fuming.
Yeah.
I love that.
He looks like he's going to kill her in her sleep. Yeah, no, I don't think there's a secret romance between them, but there's definitely a old married couple vibe from Toby and Henrietta, I think.
Yeah. I always get the image that like an old married couple. He cares for Toby. Sorry, he cares for Henrietta. Sorry, in the same way that like an old couple, maybe with the wife being a lot older and frailer, would look after. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and like Henrietta does make sure to like look after Toby as well in different ways. You know, they look out for each other.
Yeah, I quite like.
But
that.
like relationships, friendships, and falling outs. Obviously, falling outs. Now, this is in the book text. It's obviously Thomas and Percy. I
was going to say Thomas and Percy.
They do not want to. Thomas does not want to share his branch line with anyone.
No. And actually, I've got Tramway here.
Percy gone.
Hold on a minute. Where's the bit? One of my favourite lines.
What I do kind of like with the Farquhar branch is like Thomas and Percy, for the most part, get along, but when they fall out, they fall out. And I feel like Toby just kind of sits on the sidelines, just getting like earache from both sides.
Yeah, he just takes. He just goes along with it. You know, he'll butt in on either side of an argument.
Yeah.
But here we are. I love this. You know, don't be frightened, Thomas. He laughed. It's only me. Your ugly fizz is enough to frighten anyone. It's one of my favourite lines.
They are brutal to each other, but I do feel like they do get along for the most part. But it seems to be kind of like the I say get along, like, you know, they tolerate each other.
I like Gordon, Henry, and James are a funny dynamic because you can get one will side with the other one. In you know, you could often get Gordon and Henry would gang up on James, like in James and the Express.
Yeah.
And poor James is there trying to make conversation, and they're really not interested at all. But then, as you know, as time develops, it can go the other way, where you'll have like Henry and James will gang up on Gordon a bit, and I think that works. You know,
it all depends on kind of like what happens within the things. Like that is like the kind of like little group.
They are a clique, those three. Those three are a little clique, really. They are.
Yeah, but they're constantly at like each other's throats, and they're always looking at the next opportunity to take the piss out of one of them, out of each other.
Yeah.
But like, it's interesting, the question about relations that have gone kind of unsaid in the books, like kind of like how characters you don't usually see interacting would interact, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm trying to think of one that you don't really see much at all. Kind of like maybe like Thomas, Donald, and Douglas. You only really see him interact at comes to breakfast.
Yeah, that's the only time. Donald, Douglas, and Percy.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think you ever. No, you do in Bluebells of England. Actually, thinking about it.
Yeah, you do.
But again, you only really get small little bits. It would be nice to see a bit more and how they kind of bounce off each other in kind of like the more work environment and stuff. It's one of those interesting things which sadly we're never going to see, like within the context of the Railway series at least.
And I think there are certain times you get dynamics between engines, and I think there's some of the most hilarious ones where it's engines that don't normally mix. An example, and I have the book here, and actually it's when it's narrated by Willie Rushton is one of my favourite.
I think
so. He rolled to the platform just as Gordon arrived. "Hello," he said. "Who are you?" "I'm Gordon. Who are you?" "I'm Sir Handel." "Yes, I've heard of you. You're an express engine, I believe." "So am I, but I'm used to bogie coaches, not these cattle trucks." "Do you have bogie coaches?" "Oh, yes, I see you do. We must have a chat sometime. Sorry, I can't stop. Must keep time, you know." And he puffed off, leaving Gordon at a loss for words. That's one of my favourites.
And it is those little things where it's like you've got Sir Handel is essentially the Gordon of the Scarlari, but he's essentially Gordon ramped up without the character development by that point.
Absolutely. So he meets Gordon, who is very big, very proud, and then just Gordon's like, "Who on earth is this?" And also like, yeah, Sir Handel is a much smaller and less powerful engine, but he's got little person syndrome. He's just like
the ego compensates.
Yeah. No, that's
one of those things. It is those nice things which I kind of wish you do see more of as well.
Absolutely.
Like, you get Duncan interacting with James, don't you?
Yes, and then it's just in book 14, and it's just after, obviously, book 13, where Diesel's caused trouble in the yard.
Yeah, so
Duncan's moaning about Rusty, and then James this whole, "Oh, we had a Diesel in the yard, but I sent him packing," which is a load of lies.
And it is, I'd be interested to see Duncan interacting with more standard gauge locos, especially with the way he is.
Duncan with the Scottish twins would be interesting.
It would be, actually, yeah. Because Donald and Douglas, like, while they are obviously both Scottish, they do seem a little bit more of the friendly type, where Duncan would, you know, give you a Glasgow kiss.
Saying that, according to the Thomas Tank Engine Man, how Awdry wrote the twins, it had been inferred by some Scottish friends that they appear to be like typical Glaswegians.
Yeah, yeah.
Although our friend Stuart disagreed with that.
It's interesting. Yeah, I can't remember where Stuart placed them.
I can't actually.
But obviously, Duncan's originally from Kilmarnock, so.
But I suppose I often, with the Railway series, I take it for what it is. So for me, I don't see any maybe underlying relationships that aren't really specified. I think they're very much what you see on the page is what you get.
Questions like that is one of those things where it's fun to theorise what might happen if two characters got at each other's necks. It's one of those type of things. It's interesting to think about, but sadly, again,
I'm trying to think of some two characters who would never meet.
Caldy and all like God's.
I'll say Lord Harry or Patrick.
Lord Harry and Patrick
and Thomas.
Yeah, because obviously, like Lord Harry's very much was kind of pompous, like Thomas is and such, but got his comeuppance very much so.
Lord Harry and Sir Handel. That'd be an interesting one because they're quite.
No, they could meet because obviously all the.
That's what I was thinking. It could be.
Locos do get overhauled at Craven's Gate now.
Yes, so you could have an incident where, like, Caldy was resting on a.
Exactly.
And the dynamic between Lord Harry and Sir Handel would be quite interesting. I think that leads into sort of our last question, which is from Ivory. And this is one that will appeal to both of us, which is, I'd like to see what your take on the Scarlari Railway would be. A heritage line like the Tally or private-owned line? I'll let you start this one, Lee.
Yeah, well, in the books, the Scarlari never kind of leaves the ownership of the Brown family, Sir Handel Brown, which is Sir Handel's named after, is the owner of the Scarlari Railway. It's never mentioned in anything regarding the railway. I'm just having a quick look for iOS now.
I was going to say that the whole point is that Sir Handel Brown is essentially Sir Hayden Jones. The difference is Sir Hayden Jones dies.
Well, Sir Handel Brown 1 does die in 1950 as well, which is what I was looking at.
But there's a son that takes over.
Yeah. It says... by 1949 and 1950, the slate quarry was nearly worked out, and with the death of Sir Handel Brown 1 in 1950, the future for the railway in the valley looked very black indeed. And then, as we said, there was a Sir Handel Brown 2 who took over the railway after his father, and that's the difference between the Talaclin and the Scarlari, is that there was someone to take over the railway. Well, to be fair, with the Talaclin it was just the Talaclin Railway Preservation Society and Tom Rolt, and Bill Faulkner and just all of like the pioneering. Then at the start of the Talyllyn, they were the built-in, no, not built-in, Dully's one of drivers at the minute. I'm getting my names mixed up. Yeah, no. I do think the difference, obviously, is now the Skarloey would still be a privately owned line by the Handel Brown family, but I think it would operate similar to how the Festiniog Railway runs today. While the Festiniog Railway is a heritage line, they have paid staff, like paid drivers, paid firemen, and volunteer firemen, volunteer drivers, volunteer guards. So I feel like the Skarloey would work on the same premise as it's a privately owned railway, which has paid staff, paid drivers, paid firemen, but also gets a lot of volunteer inputs as well.
I think that's a fair point. And I think the difference you have with the TR and the Skarloey is that the Talyllyn Railway was in a very I think this is where the two railways parallel each other. Prior to whatever 1950 or whatever year it was, the TR and the Skarloey are both in financially dire situations.
Yeah.
And I think, the whole gallant old engine Renaeus saved the railway, etc. I think the difference you have, and this is how I've looked into it, and I've discussed this with Ben, and we came up with the idea that it was the selling of the Ben Glass quarry on the Skarloey to the Ministry of Defence that I think got them out of a big financial rut.
Yeah.
That's why they were able to buy number 3 and 4 off the Soda Aluminium Company.
Let's have a look. When did the MOD buy the quarry again?
When Peter Sam has his incident with the trucks at the Ben quarry.
They bought it in 1960.
So it was obviously on the cards because this is about 58 when that happened. And he did say that Peter Sam is getting some of the last.
Here we are, clearing trips. Here we are. The Ministry of Defence. Negotiations took time for if the MOD to use the quarry, it had to be cleared in terms agreed on. Yeah, here we are. They approached the Handel 2 in 1953. They cleared it out by 1958, and the sale went through in 1960. So I imagine they would have already had Sir Handel and Edward and Peter Sam before they started talking.
Yeah,
but that then would have given them the push to obviously start planning ahead, buying Duncan, sending Renaeus off for overhaul, getting Rusty. That made all of that possible. And just reading here, the sale went through in 60 and also paid for the a little bit of the loop building around Lakeside.
And I also imagine, of course, the Skarloey Railway would make money out of the hauling of the MOD trains.
I can imagine, because those would need to be paid for by the MOD.
Because is it fair to say that Ben Glass Quarry is used as an ammunition dump?
That's exactly what it is now.
So when you think about it, Awdry states that the incident with George and Sir Handel happened, thank goodness, with an empty ammunition train.
Ammunition train.
If it had been loaded.
George rams into the vans, the whole train explodes.
There's just a big crater left.
Yeah.
That's the end of Sir Handel. I think you've summed that up, Luke. That it's a private concern. I mean, we're sort of both modelling the same time with the Skarloey Railway.
Yeah, no, we are. I kind of imagine there being the Skarloey Railway, the Skarloey Railway Company, and the Skarloey Railway Preservation Society as well. I imagine they kind of like co-run the railway with the private kind of at the top, and then you've got the Preservation Society supporting the railway and what they do.
Yeah.
And also like being in charge of the volunteers and organising, heritage projects and restorations and such.
I imagine, again, this is just my personal headcanon, that the preservation side of the Skarloey Railway may be something like 10 years behind the TR, whereas the TR needed it to move on.
Yeah.
I can imagine it was maybe in the 60s that the Skarloey Preservation Group came into sort of being. And
Yeah. I can imagine a bit, maybe not that late, maybe like late 50s, because even though they did buy Sir Handel and Peter Sam, or Falcon and Stewart, they would have still only had a few members of staff. They literally they had Sir Handel Brown, the owner. They had
Edward Thomas,
Peter Sam,
Peter Sam, yeah,
who was the manager, Ivo Hugh, the fitter, and that's it.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure
Peter's some drivers and firemen, because of course in Gallant Old Engine back in the day, you just got Ivor Hugh and Peter Sam as driver and yeah. So we know this from the TR's history. That means that Ivor Hugh would have been driver and fireman.
Yeah, because Ivo Hugh was the fitter essentially. So Ivo Hugh was driver and fireman. Peter Sam was the guard and the manager.
Because of course you had one engine in steam. Skarloey wasn't being run.
Sorry, foreman Ivo Hugh. Yeah.
Skarloey wasn't really being run at this point, so you got one engine.
It was just Rheneas.
So of course, by the time that you get to Peter Sam and Sir Handel, Mr. Peter Sam is no longer obviously doing guard duties at this point. He is the thing controller.
Well, he still was the thing controller, but also the thin guard. He's juggling jobs.
Yeah.
I do imagine they would get volunteer support in kind of not long after, but would probably have a bit more money to start paying staff as well.
Yeah.
And I imagine some of the first volunteers would then be offered the paid jobs first.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Obviously, you've got Nancy's dad.
Yeah.
Who isn't Mr. Peter Sam, who is a guard. So I imagine he's possibly one of the first paid guards that they hired separately.
Yeah. Something just to broach before we finish. This came up in a I think it was a comment on my Twitter that you'd replied to. Somebody had commented how they didn't think the Skarloey Railway was that long because they were used to TV series. And my first thought was, no, I think of the Skarloey as being very long because it's longer than the TR. I imagine it being about 11 or 12 miles because it goes up and then it curves back round on itself.
Yeah. It's the Tarleton's 7.25 miles long.
I could measure the Skarloey with some string, but I can't be bothered.
And I can imagine the Skarloey being, not double the length, I don't think, but at least like.
I imagine about, because it does that snake round on itself to get to Skarloey from Rheneas.
Yeah.
I'd say about maybe 10, 11.
10 or 11 miles, I'd say, is a good.
Of course, the loop then throws into it being longer still.
Yeah, but I'm not a big fan of the loop line.
When you'd say that, I don't have a problem with the loop. I don't mind. I mean, I'm not saying this is your reason why you don't like it, but I don't mind the Skarloey being different from the.
No, me neither. Like, because it's what does make it endearing, because it's quite similar, but then also not.
No, and I must admit, when I was planning to do my layout of Skarloey, it gave me a headache trying to visualise it because it can't be the same as Abergynolwyn because you can see this lake in it, and it's. Oh, he's knocking things over.
Yeah, just give me a second, Tom. Sorry, can we just pause the recording?
Yeah.
Well, I'll just be a second.
We're back again.
Well, you can probably edit this out.
Actually, I wasn't going to. I was just going to upload it in one go because I'm just being lazy. Doesn't matter anyway. To be honest, I was about to wrap it up anyway. What I was going to say is I think we'll have to do a Skarloey chat.
Oh yeah, there's a lot to discuss.
There is, absolutely. So we've been doing 45 minutes. I said it would only be half an hour. So I'll try. We'll see what happens with this. It might upload. I'm going to try and upload it directly to Twitter, although I don't know what the size may go down with on that. because the only trouble we have with YouTube now is the whole rulings that came in, because I did notice, Mr. Luke Ryan, you swore in this episode.
Oh no.
You did. So we might have to just, might have to bleep it out. I don't know.
Oh, really?
But yeah, we will. I will. We'll see what happens. But thank you for joining me, Luke. This was very.
No worries. It's been fun.
So we will. We will catch you both. Well, sorry, catch you both. We will catch you all later on.
Bye.
Bye.